Hey Jackals! In this video I'll show you how you can put some text above people's heads, like me, and you can also move around, but you can also do this with items, like this. We'll be using DaVinci Resolve and we'll do this inside the edit page. Now let's get digital. I got this idea from Viva la Drept League as they use nameplates above characters in the gaming sketches. Now I imagine that they use this effect a lot, but I can't imagine that they do it manually. So what we'll be doing is making a macro. As you can see, I'm inside the edit page. We'll simply type in the name of the macro that we'll have. This is nameplate 2, as you can see, but currently it's not working, so I'll just delete it. And then we'll simply drag it onto the clip and we'll have it under the effects. So you'll be easily able to apply the effect in the edit page, but first let's actually make it. Now what we need is an actual clip. You can use any clip that you want. I'll just use this one again. And you do want to use a clip, and that's because when you go inside the Fusion page, you have the media in. And you'll need this at the end, when we make a macro. Now to make this effect, we actually need some text. So use the text node and connect it to the media in. Now you don't need any text at the end, but I suggest you use some text while you make the effect. I'll use placeholder 1 for now. The first thing that you'll want to do is change the font. I'll use Arial because everyone has it. So that's because if someone downloads it, this effect will also work for them. And maybe I'll go with the regular font. Next, you want to change the color. This can be anything that you want. And just so you know, any changes that you make here will be then set as default values. So if you want to have a white text, just leave it as white. You can also change the size, the tracking, the spacing if you want to. And we can also use the write-on function if that's something that you want. Now we won't be positioning the text manually, we'll do that automatically. But before we do, we'll go to shading. And inside here we'll select number 2 because we want to add some outline to this. I'll change the outline color to black. And I'll also increase the thickness by doubling it. It's not really visible because I've changed the color to blue, so I'll change it to yellow, so something like that. Now we have the color and the outline. You can also enable the background, or this is the shadow. So if you want the shadow, this is the shadow, but you can also enable number 4, and this is the background. Now by default this affects the characters, so as you can see we have a split here, so we can simply change this to align, so we have the whole effect. Then we can also adjust the roundness if we need to, and we can also change the color, maybe something like that, and we can also adjust the alpha. So just by doing this you can get a different kind of style. So that's it about the text effect, and now we'll position it above one of the people's heads, and we'll do this automatically. So to position the text automatically and to make it follow a person or an object, we'll use a tracker. We'll use this one and connect it just behind the media in. Now we have one tracker and we want to track some people. And in this case, I'll position it above the head because this will give me the best contrast between the subject and the background. So I'll just position it like that. I'll also scale this sub window, which just means how far this window inside will move. And now I'll also change the channel. And I think in this case the red channel will give the best contrast, and it does. I'll also go to the beginning because this is the place where I want the actual tracking to start, but you don't have to. You can also track from this place if you want to. And for tracking, I'll use this option, track forward, and if I track from this place, I'll simply position it here, wait for the tracking to be done, then I would position the playhead back to this point, and I would track backwards. But because this person has a good tracking position, I can simply go to the beginning. So the tracking is done. We have some path, and this path will be used to connect this text to. You don't have to do this step and also the tracking step. If you've done it, you will simply delete it at the end so you don't have any issues. But how we'll do it is by selecting the text, go to the layout, right click on the center, click connect to, tracker 1 path, position. Bam! And it's positioned on top of the head. So now we need to position it above the head. And we have a couple of ways of doing that. One way to do that is to go into the merge node and use the center position and simply adjust the X and Y values. And as you can see, this does what we want it to. But in case you want to adjust the angle, this is not the best solution. So in that case, what you want to do is to use a transform node. Now this works in similar way as the transform when it comes to the center position, but you also have access to the pivot point. So if I now put the pivot point, which is this green X, into the center of the text, and I now use the angle, the text will spin from the center of the pivot point. And then the third option, how you can offset the text, is to again go to the text, layout, right click on the center, insert, and use offset, offset. If you use the offset position, this will offset the current position of the keyframe. So if I extend it, you can see just what happens. So the text will simply jump from this position to this one and back here, and that's not what you want. So I'll simply undo all of this, and I'll simply right click, insert, offset, offset. Now this will most likely put the text outside of screen, so simply drag it to where you want it to be. And that's basically it when it comes to the text offset. Now which method you want to use, that's up to you. But in this case, I think I'll just use the transform one because it makes the most sense once you make the macro. Now, if you followed along, you'll want to delete all of the changes that we've made when it comes to the position and the tracking. So in the center, I'll now remove the tracking, put these to default values. I'll also delete the tracking here. Now I have deleted the tracking, and the positions that I've adjusted is that once I make the macro, those positions and tracking would actually be applied to the macro. And if I went to the edit page, I would then have to always change and delete those values, which is not what you want. So now that's all good, but we have only one tracker and we have multiple people. And maybe that's also something that you want to do. So what I'll do is simply copy this 4 times. Maybe you want to have this for 5 people total. So we have the text set. What you can do is simply change the number here, so with that we know which one is which. And then lastly, we only have one tracker, so I'll simply add 4 more, so we have 5 in total. And we can also adjust the position of the default trackers here to something that is a little bit more accessible. Now let me just show you why I want to have more trackers put inside here and also more texts. If I show you one of the previous trackings, so I'll use this tracking, number 1. In this test, as you can see, I have 4 trackers. You don't really see them at the moment, but that's okay. But let's say that I would want to have a 5th one. When I click add, nothing really happens. Well, it does, you just don't see it. So I'll go into the effect, just click on the fusion icon. I'll double click this, click on the tracker, and as you can see, I actually have 7 of them. Now I can delete them here. I'll leave this one as is. I'll go back into the edit page, and now when I click delete, as you can see, I only have 4 here. And if I use delete, what happens? Well, it actually deletes them, because if I go back into the Fusion page, as you can see, it deleted them, but this is not actually reflected inside here. So now you know that I actually have 2 trackers, and if I delete this one, which is not existent, what happens? Nothing yet. What about now? Well, look at that. DaVinci Resolve is still working. So I get the add and delete didn't crash DaVinci Resolve at the moment, but what happens when I actually display the trackers? And you do this by going here. By default, it's set to transform and use Fusion Overlay. Oh, look at that. It actually shows it up. but nothing works as it should. And now it does. But still you don't get the access to other trackers. So let me try deleting all of them. I am surprised, I'll tell you that. So I'll delete this effect and maybe put this one in, which only has one tracker. Well, I guess today DaVinci Resolve has a good day and it won't crash. But just so you know, these two buttons did crash DaVinci Resolve yesterday. So because of that, I won't actually be using the add and delete button in the macro. So now to make the macro, I suggest you do this in order. So if you want to have the tracking information displayed at the top, click on the macro first, then go text 1, the transform. If you'll also do something with the merge, you can select it now. Otherwise, simply go like this. And select all of the merges last. Then right click on the last node. And if you noticed, I didn't click the media in. Then go to macro and create one. Now inside here, we'll have to make a lot of changes. In the tracker, we now have 5 trackers and we have to enable all of them. And this will take some clicking. So what do we want? We obviously want to have these buttons, at least this one, but I'll enable all of them. So we have that. We don't need these options. And then we have the tracking list, which is here. As I said, I don't want to use the add and delete button, so I won't enable them. I'll use the show so that I can actually see them. And then I'll enable everything that has to do with name 1 up to name 5, except the offsets, because I won't be adjusting the offsets. So that's why I won't be enabling them. Now we have the operation tag, the options tab, and the settings tab, and I didn't make any adjustments here, so we can close the tracker. Then we have text 1. Inside here, let's see, under the text tab, we want to be able to change the text. So that is under the text, style text. We want to be able to change the font, the size, and maybe also the tracking and the line spacing, if you want to adjust the spacing between the characters and spacing between the lines. And maybe we'll also enable the write on function, which is the start and the end. Then we have the layout. Inside here, we'll append the center position to the tracker, so that's what we have to select. And if you don't know what the name will be, we have center, and maybe we can use text center, or maybe text path, if that's what you want. Then we don't have anything in the transform, and we have the shading tab. Inside here, I'll select the elements, shading elements, select elements. We have select, and I'll enable the first 4. You can enable the name. Now this would say name, like it is here, but the value would be a blue border, which you can't change here, so you would actually have to change it here before we make the macro. Now we can maybe adjust the opacity, so we can enable that one, and then we just want to be able to change the color. So let's find all of that. So we have the color here, and let's try to do the same for all of the 4 elements. So we have name 2, 3, and name 4. We have the opacity 2, and we have the color. Then we have the opacity 3 and color. And then we should also have opacity 4 and color. Just like that. And that's it for the shading and the whole text element. Now inside the transform node, we want to be able to adjust the center position, but this center position is actually text offset. So maybe I'll use offset center text and offset pivot text. Now one thing that you could do in merges, you could adjust the blend options. Blend and call it text 1. Now I'll just quickly do this the same for all of the other nodes, and I'll come back once I'm done. Now the clicking took some time, but now that I'm done, I can simply save the macro. So go to File, and I'll use Save as Group. If you use Save As, you won't have access to the nodes individually in case you need to come back inside the Fusion page. So I'll use Save as Group. Now go one step back to Fusion, then go to Templates, Edit, and this will be an effect. It's not a title, it's an effect because we want to apply it to an actual video clip. Then give it a name, nameplate tutorial, save it, and now we can close this. Let's see, does it work? It does not, so this time I was not lucky, so I actually have to restart DaVinci Resolve to see the effect. Okay, does it show up now? It does. So I can simply drag it onto this video clip. As you can see, we have 5 texts. This is now in the order that I've made the macro. Now if I don't want the text, I can simply use the blend option, or I could also delete the text. I'll just disable text for now and use the trackings. And let's say that I want to track these 3 people. So I'll disable these 2 trackings, click here and use the Fusion overlay. Now in this case, DaVinci Resolve crashed. I have no idea why. It should work, but I guess some days are good and some days are bad. So the effect is still applied. This also stayed applied and we also don't see the text. Now can I use this Fusion overlay? I guess not. So now I'll enable all of the trackers from 1 to 5 and see if that changes anything. And if it still won't change anything, then I'll go into the actual effect and try it out in the Fusion page. And actually I'll first delete this effect and put it on again. And still nothing. Now I'll use the Fusion page to see if it works there and maybe somehow that will fix it. So I'll select the clip, go to effects and open the effect in the Fusion page. Double click on the tool. As you can see, we have everything as we had it before. We can also right click and ungroup it. So we have everything like this. Now inside the tracker here, let's adjust the trackings. So this one will be here. I'll zoom in and adjust it. So this one will be like that. This is the second one. And then we have the third one. So now I can simply track this and it should work just fine. It does in this case. Then I could go to the texts, layout and connect the centers to the trackings. This is one, this is the second one. And this will be the third one. Now I'll simply use the blends on number 5 and 4. So we now have the texts moving. Now these two are overlapping. That's why we have the transforms. So we can adjust the size here if you want it. Now in case you want to use the size of the transform node, you also have to select it when you export it. I didn't, but I can adjust it here, and that's what I'll do. In this case, I'll just position the text, and I can adjust the size in the text node. So I guess when it comes to the size, I guess it would be better to adjust it in the transform node. And lastly, we have this position. So I can place it right about here and adjust the size as well, just like that. So that's all done. I'll go back to the edit page and see if I can do anything with tracker number 4 and 5, or if this option will again bug out. So this works just fine. Let me first make some adjustments to this clip, which is basically the same. I'll just use this test composition, which only has one tracker, and if I enable it here, this one works, as you can see, but for some reason it didn't work here. Now DaVinci Resolve didn't crash, but it just goes to show that DaVinci Resolve is buggy because now I can't actually extend all of the options that I have inside this macro. So I'll delete it, put a new one in. So this is a little bit strange. I don't know exactly why the trackers show up now. Maybe this has something to do with me going to the Fusion page previously and making the adjustments, or because I've enabled this Fusion overlay with this one single clip. It could also be that you only simply have to enable the Fusion overlay before you actually put the effect on the clip. It could be one of the three, who knows. But anyway, now it works. We have 5 trackers. I can disable 2 of them, as you can see. I can also position them how I want, just the same as I did in the Fusion page. But now when you click on the tracking, you won't actually see the window and nothing much will happen, so you have to wait this out until you get a pop-up like this. Now the tracking is done, and then you can go to the text. So here we'll have the text center. I'll right click, connect it to the path position, so that's one. I'll scale it down. Then we have the second one. Connect it to this one. I'll scale this one as well. And then we have the third one, center position, connected to this path. Now I'll scale this one as well. And then I can go all the way down, disable these 2 texts. And let's see, where do we have the offsets? We have them here. So I can simply adjust it like that. Then we have the second one. And the third one. Now if I wanted to, I could also adjust the pivot. But I forgot one major thing, I didn't select the angle. So now I can't actually adjust the angle. So you can use the center position, the pivot position, the angle, and the size inside of the transforms. Then you can simply use any font that you want. And you can adjust all of the other settings as you see fit. Now what you can also do is maybe this person is walking away. So I can go to text 3, which is right here. I can adjust the size. Let's say maybe that this is the starting size, so I can simply animate it and go to the end, and this will be the ending size, like that. And we can also adjust the offset by animating it just as well. I guess I didn't select the size at the beginning, so this is the beginning size. And we can also offset it. Maybe something like that. Now let's see how this looks like. Now if you have some playback issues, you can go into the playback, render cache. In this case, I would use smart playback. And this will start caching away. And you just need to wait until it's cached. Now this is cached and it looks like this. And one important takeaway is when you make a macro, make sure that you select all of the options, otherwise you'll have to do all of the clicking again. And that's how you can make your own nameplate template in DaVinci Resolve to be used in the edit page. And if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more DaVinci Resolve and video editing content, and hit the bell notification icon so you know when my next video comes out. And if you want today's tutorial files, you can get them by supporting me on my Buy Me a Coffee page. I'm Simon, and until next time, jackals, keep it digital.